Namaste. My name is Karthikeya Sharma. First of all, I would just like to say it has been a privilege listening to you. And although you can't see me, I can see you.
So, I can see you.
Before I ask my question, sir, I would just like you to honestly look within rather than without, because this is more of a personal question. For someone who likes to dream, for someone who likes to live life through more than just a social process, for someone who likes to feel, how does he or she know, that literature is his calling? And when does he know that it's time to go? Thank you.
Well, very tough question, because in my experience, the people I know who have become professional writers, good writers, have simply had in themselves a very strong motivation to do that kind of work. And those who have not become professional writers have not had such a strong motivation. I mean, it's the kind of work for which you need to be a self-starter. Nobody will give you permission to do it. Nobody particularly wants you to do it. You have to do it because you can't not do it. That's the only reason to be a writer, is because you can't avoid being a writer. If there was a way to not write books for me, I would not write books. It's much, much easier to not write books than to write books. And the reason I write books is because I have never in my life been able to avoid writing them. It fulfills a very profound need in me to do that. And I think it's true of most true writers, that they would feel like that. And so it is a question, you're right, it is a question of looking inside, and to see whether in you there is that motivation or not. Now some writers are lucky in that very early in their lives they achieve a degree of respect and success. Many of my contemporaries in Britain achieved that success at a much higher speed than I did. For example, Martin Amis and Ian McEwan were both very well recognized as writers in their mid-20s, and had this sort of flying start and have continued on from that. This was not what happened to me. I had a very stumbling, awkward start. And to put it simply, I graduated from university in 1968, and Midnight Children was published in 1981. It took me almost 13 years to learn how to write. And during that time, I was watching my contemporaries kind of zoom off in Rolls Royces while I was on the starting line on a bicycle. And I hated them, obviously. But if I look back at that self, I'm kind of proud of that young man's willingness to dedicate 12 years of his life trying to learn how to do something without any guarantee that he would ever be any good at it. And if somebody asked me now, how would you like to spend the next 12 years trying to do something with no guarantee that you'll ever be able to do it, I would look at them as if they were crazy. But that's what I did, and that's what I think many writers do. They have that dedication and devotion to the art, to take whatever length of time it takes in order to learn how to do it. And if you don't have that kind of internal motivation, then be an accountant. Do something else.
Person standing up.
Sir Rushdie, once again, an honor to have you with us this evening.
Thank you.
When you won the Booker of Booker Awards a few years ago, there was a lot of talk in terms of if you join the list of Rabindranath Tagore, V.S. Naipaul to win the big prize. Just curious about your thoughts. Are you ambivalent about the big prize? Would you be pleasantly surprised? And your viewpoints on that.
The prize? No, I'm in favor of prizes.
The big prize, Nobel Prize.
I'd like lots and lots of them. Thank you very much. If you have any to donate, please send them this way. No, I mean, you can be hypocritical about all this, but the truth is that everybody likes to have a pat on the back, and everybody likes to have their work recognized. It's just human nature, that. But I think you have to also understand that they are kind of unimportant. in any kind of long scheme. Do you remember who won the Booker Prize last year? Because I don't. Who won the Nobel Prize last year? No, I mean, it's... see, somebody remembers, one person. The point I'm making is that the real prizes of literature are not these. The reason you write books is to write something which you hope will endure, and that people will go on reading it for many years, and if possible, long after you yourself are alive, and so on. And for me, for example, as was mentioned, Midnight Children is almost 30 years old. He's 30 years old next year. Almost 35 years since I started writing it. And the idea that this book, which I dreamed up when I was still in my 20s, should still be interesting and valuable and enjoyable to readers now that I'm in my 60s, that people who were not born when the book came out, still pick it up and enjoy reading it. To me, that's a bigger prize than any prize given by a jury. Because as I say, if you write this kind of book, you're writing it to try and create something that lasts. You're trying to leave behind you a shelf of books that will last and that people will be able to read with pleasure in the future, and in the present and in the future. And at the other extreme of popular fiction, the desire to write is not for longevity. It's for instant gratification, and that's fine. That there are books that are written in order to please people right now, with really no thought to longevity. The most popular American novel of the 1930s was a novel called The Green Hat by Michael Arlen. It sold vast numbers of copies. It has not been in print for 50 years. And that's at the popular end of the spectrum, that's how it goes. At this end of the spectrum, there was a very interesting study that happened in British publishing about 10 years ago, when the Trade magazine asked publishers for the list, not of their top 10 best-selling titles of the year, but of the top 10 best-selling titles in the history of the publishing house. And the moment they asked that question, you saw that the cream rose to the top. At that point, the best-selling titles were Joyce, Proust, Kafka, Hemingway, Fitzgerald, Nabokov. The writers were supposed to be not commercial. But if you look at it in the long view, their work endures for generations and ends up actually outstripping, the Ian Flemings and the Agatha Christie's and so on. So that's, for me, what matters more. But since I won't be around to see my work survive after my death, in the meanwhile, I'm happy to have the prizes.
Yes, sir. I'm going to... Last couple of questions.
My question to you, Mr. Rushdie, is where does this freedom to dissent start and where does the dissent to freedom stop? Or the vice versa?
Could you say a little more about that? What do you mean? You mean about the limits of it?
Limits of, exactly. Both are fine. There's a freedom to dissent, and one can dissent to freedom as well. The question is, where does one start and where does one stop?
Well,
it's a classical question.
Yeah, it is. It's a question which perhaps we don't have time to answer properly, but let me just say something about it. There is remember, I mentioned Saul Bellow in my remarks. In another novel of Saul Bellow's, The Adventures of Augie Marsh, the narrator and title character, Augie Marsh, says at the beginning of the novel, he says, there is no fineness or accuracy in suppression. If you hold down one thing, you hold down the adjoining. And this is a version of the old statement that freedom is indivisible. There's no such thing as being almost free. You are either free or you're not free. And this is an absolute. It's simply, in a society is either free or it's not free. The limitations on freedom that societies decide to place do exist, and different societies place those boundaries in different places. For example, in England, the Race Relations Act makes it a crime to make statements which are racially bigoted, a crime which is punishable by law. In America, the First Amendment of the American Constitution guarantees your right to make any statement, even if it's hate speech. And so America sets the bounds more broadly than England. The American idea is that you can't decide. Who decides what is hateful and what is not? The moment somebody starts making those decisions, who guards the guards? And so the view behind the First Amendment is that it's better said than not said. That hateful thought does not cease to exist if you ban its expression. And in some ways, by making it taboo, you can increase its power rather than reduce its power. You could drive it underground and make it seem glamorous and radical, and forbidden fruit tastes sweeter. So there is a clear difference between the British position and the American position. So there are always limitations that societies decide that they will place on freedom, and where they place those limitations is a matter for that society to decide, of course. But my general argument would be that the onus of proof, the burden of proof, must always be on the would-be censor. That the principle must be liberty. And if you want to limit that liberty, you'd better have a damn good argument. Many countries, for instance, make reporting restrictions in time of war. And journalists always complain about them. The American government during the recent Iraq war, for a long time, made it illegal to print photographs of the bodies of American soldiers returning in coffins to the United States, because they thought that would reduce support for the war effort. And clearly, journalists disapproved of that limitation very strongly, said, why should they not report that, as it was actually taking place? So this is a very big argument about where you place the limitations. And as I say, I think as far as I can get today is to say that the principle, in my view, should be absolute freedom. That's the principle. And then if there are specific cases where you think that principle should be violated, then you need to prove that. The defenders of freedom should not have to prove the validity of freedom. It's those who would restrict it who need to prove that there is a reason for restricting it. And that the standard of proof should be very high. It should be extremely difficult to make that case. And I think that's as far as I can go right now.